This is the news on top of the hour.
Live from our studio in Georgetown.
Kaieteur Radio, 99.1 FM.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's newscast on Kaieteur Radio. I am Kevin Smith. Let's get to the news in detail. Guyana's Vice President, Dr. Pagua Celebrations, has suggested that in light of the perceived benefits, a gas-to-shore pipeline from the Liza field to the Wales estate is a no-brainer, given the possibility of reducing the cost of generation of electricity in Guyana. Former Energy Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kevin Ramnarine, is of the view that Guyana needs to do much more before forging ahead with the project, since, among other reasons, the touted $800 million price tag is just for the pipeline alone. The stark warning was given by Ramnarine during a recent webinar on Guyana's proposed gas-to-shore project hosted online by Oil Now. Drawing on the Trinidad and Tobago's experience, Ramnarine noted that the bulk of the natural gas produced in that country does not go into electricity generation directly, despite the fact that all electricity in the Twin Island Republic is generated using natural gas. In other news, even with some improvements to Guyana's financial system, like the enactment of the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act of 2003, the country's public financial management is still, quote-unquote, inadequate. Making these damning revelations is the Inter-American Development Bank in its recent report titled Economic Institutions for a Resilient Caribbean. In the report, the IDB noted that in its country strategy for Guyana for 2016 to 2020, the enactment of the Act of 2003 led to the improvements in public financial management. The Act, together with the Audit Act of 2004 and the regulations for the Audit Act 2005, regulated internal auditing. This, the bank said, is although most ministries remain without internal auditing office. In addition, the bank said that ICT upgrades and capacity building fostered sustainability and improved transparency in Guyana's public institutions. In other news, Guyana's President, Dr. Irfaan Ali, is calling on the developed world to do more for developing countries, taking into account the prevailing coronavirus pandemic and its implications in addition to other economic realities. Such assistance, according to Dr. Ali, could come in the form of debt forgiveness. He was at the time addressing a virtual meeting of heads of state and governments on the international debt architecture and liquidity, and encouraged the granting of debt relief by bilateral and commercial creditors not explicitly participating in debt relief initiatives. Guyana, he said, is deeply concerned over the widening development chasm between rich and poor countries to be put in place to aid countries struggling to rebound from the deadly disease. In other news, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions that have been imposed on the country, Pagua was still celebrated in sections of the country. In the ancient county of Berbice, there were celebrations among close family members and friends on Sunday. Moreover, it wasn't the usual holiday celebrations with persons visiting each other's homes to play with water, the colorful beer and powder. Rather, the atmosphere was mostly somber and quiet for many. Minister Ashni Singh, who visited the region over the weekend for a series of public meetings, took some time Sunday, along with Regional Vice Chairman Zamal Hussain, to visit several mandirs in Region 6 to participate in some of their celebrations. Masks were also distributed. Meanwhile, the construction of a gas-to-shore power plant without undertaking a cost-benefit analysis or feasibility for a project that could likely cost Guyana some $800 million should be cause for concern to all Guyanese. This is according to ANAG Executive Jonathan Yearwood. Yearwood, whose party holds representation in the National Assembly, was at the time responding to an article carried by Kaieteur News captioned "Financial Feasibility of Gas-to-Shore a No-Brainer," said Vice President Pagua Celebrations. Yearwood said he would like to ask Jagdeo how it was possible for him to arrive at the figures of $7 or $8 per kilowatt hour, or to cut the cost of generation by 50% from its current level, as no feasibility study was done. Yearwood, relying on an Investopedia definition, noted that a feasibility study is an analysis that takes all of the project's relevant factors into account to ascertain the likelihood of completing the project successfully. He was adamant that the importance of a feasibility study is based on organizational desire to get it right before committing resources, time, or budget. And moving on, public procurement is a critical area that needs prompt improvement, as it represents about a quarter of budgets and plays a critical role improving financial management in the Caribbean. Making these and other fundamental points is the Inter-American Development Bank, and one country in need of this prompt improvement is Guyana, said the IDB, as it highlighted that despite 15 years of assessments, the country is still without robust procurement rules. In fact, the IDB wrote in its report that little progress had been made to measure the publicly reported data in critical areas such as competitive tendering. Further to this, the development institution noted that public protests related to the corruption in the procurement process exacerbated the perception that large swathes of procurement process are closed to some bidders. Meanwhile, despite March being one of the deadliest months since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in Guyana 1 year ago, public behavior has not changed. This is according to emergency medicine specialist Dr. Zulfikar Bucks, as he referred to the situation as alarming. There are still gatherings, improper mask wearing and no mask wearing at all, and in the case toll is also on the increase, he said. Notably, Region 4 has the highest number of infections with a high number of COVID-19 deaths as well. We had reported a surge in deaths and a few new infections last week, with an average of 60 new cases per day and 2 deaths per day. And to wrap things up, let's tell you 6 years after Guyana struck oil in the lucrative Starbuck block, the government is now moving into strengthening GRA's ability to meet the tax demands of the emerging oil and gas sector. Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni Singh, said recently that government is working on upgrading GRA's system since oil and gas is completely new to the Guyanese landscape. In a recent interview, he said new skills are needed in the tax authority to administer and discharge the responsibilities relating to oil and gas. And with that, we've come to the end of this evening's newscast. I am Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening. Coming up at exactly 19 hours 20 or 7:20 p.m. is the Glenn Lal Show. Tell it as it is.
Want value for your advertising dollar? Then place your ads on Kaieteur Radio's newscasts. Streamed live on 6 different mediums, reaching hundreds of thousands. Advertise today and watch your dollar grow. Call us on 225-8465 or 226-8210 today.
It is now 19 hours 8 in Guyana. Coming up next, an excerpt from the Glenn Lal Show. Tell it as it is.